In the packed auditorium of Riverside High School, a devoted construction foreman was about to watch his daughter accept her diploma as valedictorian. What started as a proud father's moment of triumph took a shocking turn when they came face to face with a devastating family secret. David Martinez wasn't your typical suburban dad. For 18 years, he had spent his life building a loving relationship with his daughter Sofia. Known for his unwavering dedication and the sacrifices he made after his bitter divorce. When he encountered his ex-wife Elena's sudden public announcement that he wasn't Sofia's biological father, he had no idea he was walking into a web of deception that went deeper than anyone imagined. David's world shattered in front of hundreds of witnesses, setting off a chain of revelations that would lead to the discovery of a family secret so disturbing it challenged everything they believed about love, biology, and the true meaning of parenthood. What began as a graduation celebration would become a journey of devastating truth and ultimate redemption. The Martinez family would never be the same after learning that sometimes the most complicated lies are told by those who claim to love us most. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. David Martinez stood in his daughter's doorway, watching Sofia struggle with her graduation cap in the mirror. The morning light streamed through her bedroom window, catching the golden threads in her dark hair. Hair she'd inherited from Elena, though everything else about her, from her determined jawline to the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, was pure Martinez.
"Dad, this thing refuses to cooperate," Sofia muttered, trying to balance the mortarboard at the proper angle. "Here, let me." David stepped forward, his calloused hands gentle as he adjusted the cap. "Remember when you couldn't get your bike?
Helmet to sit right? You were 7, determined to ride without training wheels." Sofia smiled at their reflection. "And you spent 2 hours in the driveway, running behind me until I finally got it. Best 2 hours of my life." David's voice carried the weight of 18 years of moments like these. Scraped knees he'd bandaged, homework battles he'd supervised, dance recitals where he'd been the loudest cheering voice. "There. Perfect." She turned to face him, and David felt that familiar tightness in his chest. The overwhelming mixture of pride and terror that came with watching your child grow up. Sofia had become a young woman when he wasn't looking, all poise and intelligence and quiet strength. "I can't believe it's really happening," she said softly. "Valedictorian of Riverside High." David shook his head in wonder. "Your old man's pretty proud. My old man deserves half the credit." Sofia reached up to straighten his tie, the navy one she'd picked out for Father's Day 3 years ago. "All those nights you helped with calculus, even though I'm pretty sure I was teaching. You more than you were teaching me," David laughed. "Don't sell yourself short. You got the brains from somewhere. Mom always said I got your stubbornness." The mention of Elena brought a slight shift to the room's atmosphere, the way it always did. Not uncomfortable exactly. They'd all worked hard to make their fractured family function, but a reminder that this day would require careful navigation between 2 separate lives that had once been one. "Speaking of your mother," David checked his watch. "She'll be here soon for breakfast." They'd established this tradition after the divorce. Major milestones meant family breakfast. All 3 of them together for an hour before reality required them to split into separate camps. It was Sofia's idea, her diplomatic solution to parents who could be civil but would never again be truly comfortable in each other's presence. Downstairs, David had already set the table with Sofia's favorite, blueberry pancakes and turkey, bacon. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and coffee, homey and warm. He'd been up since 5, needing something to do with his hands, some way to channel the nervous energy that had nothing to do with graduation and everything to do with watching his little girl take another step away from him. Elena arrived exactly on time, as she always did. David heard her key in the lock. She still had one, though they'd never discussed why, and the sharp click of her heels on the hardwood floor. "Morning," she called, but her voice carried an edge David couldn't quite identify. Elena appeared in the kitchen doorway, immaculate as always in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than David made in a week. Real estate had been good to her since the divorce, better than construction had been to him lately. She looked younger than her 43 years, her dark hair styled in soft waves, makeup perfectly applied. Only David, who'd once known every expression that crossed her face, noticed the tightness around her eyes. Coffee? He held up the pot, falling into their practiced choreography of polite distance. Please. Elena accepted the mug, their fingers brushing briefly. Where's our graduate? Here. Sofia bounded down the stairs, her energy infectious. She hugged Elena, who held on perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Oh, sweetheart. Elena's voice wavered slightly. You look beautiful. Thanks, Mom. Dad's been fussing over me all morning. Someone has to, David said, flipping pancakes. This only happens once. They settled around the kitchen table, the same one where Sofia had done homework for years, where she'd announced her acceptance to State University, where they'd negotiated curfews and discussed boys and mapped out college plans. The conversation flowed easily enough. Sofia's excitement about her speech, logistics for the ceremony, last-minute reminders about photo arrangements. But David noticed Elena's restlessness. She picked at her food, checked her phone repeatedly, and made odd comments that seemed to have double meanings he couldn't quite grasp. It's important, Elena said suddenly, interrupting Sofia's story about her chemistry teacher's retirement, to be honest about who we really are. Family is about truth. Sofia paused mid-sentence. Mom, are you okay? Fine, sweetheart, just... Elena forced a smile. Just thinking about how grown up you are. How much you deserve to know. David frowned. Know what? Nothing. Everything. Elena's laugh sounded forced. I'm just emotional today. An hour later, they caravanned to Riverside High in separate cars. David followed Elena's silver Mercedes in his truck, watching her erratic driving with growing concern. She'd always been a controlled person, methodical in everything from her morning routine to her business presentations. This scattered version of Elena was someone he didn't recognize. The school parking lot buzzed with excitement. Families clustered around cars, adjusting caps and gowns, taking endless photos. David spotted his mother Carmen near the main entrance, her silver hair freshly styled, wearing the blue dress she saved for special occasions. Mijo, Carmen embraced him warmly. Ready to watch our girl graduate? More than ready. David kissed his mother's cheek. Thanks for being here, Mom. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Carmen's sharp eyes tracked Elena across the parking lot. She seems agitated. You notice too? That woman's been wound tight as a spring since she got here. What's eating at her? Before David could answer, Sofia appeared in her cap and gown, radiant with excitement and nervous energy. The family gathered for photos. First just Sofia, then with each parent separately. Then the awkward but necessary shots with both parents flanking their daughter. One with Abuela, Sofia insisted, pulling Carmen into frame. As they posed, David caught Elena's expression in his peripheral vision. She was staring at Sofia with an intensity that made his skin crawl, like someone memorizing a face they might never see again. Mom, Sofia said gently. You're squeezing too tight. Elena loosened her grip but didn't step away. Sorry, sweetheart. There are things I should have said. Things you should know. Elena. David's voice carried a warning. Not now. When, David? When is the right time for truth? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sofia looked between her parents, confusion clouding her features. Can we please just focus on today? Sofia's voice held the patient tone of someone used to managing her parents' tension. We can talk about whatever this is later. Yes, Elena said quietly. Later. Inside the gymnasium, the Martinez family found their seats in the section reserved for graduates' families. Roberto, David's younger brother, had saved them spots near the front with his wife and 2 kids. The extended family created a buffer of normalcy, their chatter and excitement helping to mask the undercurrent of tension. But Carmen kept watching Elena with the sharp attention of a woman who'd raised 2 sons and knew when someone was about to cause trouble. That girl's going to do something stupid, Carmen murmured to David. I can feel it in my bones. She's
Just emotional, David replied, though he didn't believe it himself. The ceremony began with the traditional pomp, the processional, the Pledge of Allegiance, the principal's welcome. David's attention focused entirely on Sofia as she took her place with the other graduates, her posture straight and confident despite what he knew were butterflies in her stomach. When they called Sofia Martinez to deliver the valedictorian address, David's chest swelled with pride so intense it was almost painful. His daughter walked to the podium with grace and purpose, adjusting the microphone with steady hands. "Fellow graduates, families, faculty," Sofia began, her voice clear and strong. "Today we celebrate not just our achievements, but the people who helped shape us into who we are." David hung on every word as Sofia spoke about resilience, about overcoming challenges, about the different forms that family could take. She was eloquent and poised, every inch the remarkable young woman he'd helped raise. "Family isn't just about blood," Sofia continued. "It's about the people who choose to love us, who support our dreams, who help us become our best selves. It's about the bonds we forge through shared experiences, through weathering storms together." In the audience, Elena shifted in her seat, her hands clenched in her lap. "We are who we are because of the love that surrounds us," Sofia concluded. "Because of the people who believe in us, even when we don't believe in ourselves. That is the foundation that will carry us forward." The applause was thunderous. David wiped his eyes unashamedly, while Carmen squeezed his hand. Even Roberto, usually reserved with displays of emotion, was beaming with pride. As Sofia returned to her seat and the ceremony continued with the calling of graduates, David felt a sense of completion settling over him. 18 years of parenting had led to this moment, his daughter confident and accomplished, ready to take on the world. One by one, graduates crossed the stage to receive their diplomas. The M's were approaching. David readied his phone for photos, his heart racing with anticipation. "Sofia Elena Martinez," the principal announced. Sofia walked across the stage with measured steps, her smile radiant as she accepted her diploma and posed for the official photographer. David couldn't contain his pride, jumping to his feet to cheer along with the rest of their family section. But as Sofia raised her diploma in triumph, Elena suddenly stood up beside him. David turned, expecting to see his ex-wife sharing in the celebration of their daughter's achievement. Instead, Elena's face was pale but determined, her hands shaking, as she prepared to speak words that would change everything. Elena's voice cut through the applause like a blade through silk. "That's not your real father." The words echoed across the gymnasium, amplified by the sudden, devastating silence that followed. Sofia froze on the stage, her diploma still raised, her smile dissolving into confusion. The photographer's flash went off, capturing the exact moment her world began to collapse. David felt the blood drain from his face. Around them, hundreds of heads turned toward their section, whispers rippling through the crowd like wildfire. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. Roberto half rose from his seat, his face a mask of disbelief. "Elena," David whispered, his voice barely audible. "What did you just—" "She deserves to know the truth." Elena's voice cracked, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. "David isn't your biological father, Sofia. He never was." On stage, Sofia's legs nearly gave out. The principal, confused by the disruption, stepped toward the microphone, but Sofia was already moving, her cap tumbling to the floor as she ran toward the stage exit, her gown billowing behind her. The ceremony ground to a halt. Principal Morrison tried to restore order, his voice competing with the growing buzz of shocked conversations, but it was too late. Cell phones appeared throughout the audience, recording the drama unfolding in real time. David's mind refused to process what he'd heard. 18 years of memories. Sofia's first steps, her first words, teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, cheering at soccer games. All of it suddenly felt like a lie. The foundation of his identity as a father cracked and began to crumble. "You're lying," he managed, his voice hoarse. "Elena, tell me you're lying." But Elena's face told him everything he needed to know. The guilt, the relief, the terror. It was all there, written in the tears that had destroyed her perfect makeup. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, David."
I never meant for it to happen like this. Carmen was on her feet now, her 70-year-old frame radiating fury. How could you do this? Here? Today? Her voice carried the authority of a retired teacher who dealt with countless crises, but this was beyond anything in her experience. I had to, Elena said desperately. He was going to contact her.
Marcus. He found out about Sofia, and he was going to— Who the hell is Marcus? Roberto demanded, his protective instincts fully engaged. In the chaos, no one noticed the tall, distinguished man in the back of the auditorium freeze at the
mention of his name. Dr. Marcus Chen had come today hoping for a glimpse of the daughter he'd never known existed. Armed with private investigator reports and 18 years of regret, he'd planned to approach the situation carefully, respectfully. He'd never intended for it to explode like this. The graduates on stage looked around in confusion as the ceremony devolved into family drama. Some laughed nervously, others whispered among themselves, but most simply stared at the unfolding catastrophe with the horrified fascination of witnesses to a car crash. David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the gym floor. We're leaving, now. David, wait. Elena reached for him, but he jerked away from her touch as if it burned. Don't you dare touch me. His voice was low and dangerous, the tone of a man pushed beyond his breaking point. 18 years, Elena. 18 fucking years. Language, mijo, Carmen murmured automatically, but her heart wasn't in the correction. No, Mom, no. There's no polite way to handle this. David's hands shook as he tried to process the magnitude of Elena's betrayal. She just destroyed everything, in front of everyone. The gymnasium had become a theater of whispers and stolen glances. Some families were quietly gathering their things, unwilling to be part of the spectacle. Others remained seated, drawn by the drama like rubberneckers at an accident scene. The graduates still on stage shifted restlessly, their own moment of triumph overshadowed by the Martinez family's implosion. Jake Morrison, Sofia's best friend since middle school, had been recording the ceremony from the graduate section when Elena's bombshell hit. His phone captured Sofia's flight from the stage, and without hesitation, he followed her. He found her in the hallway outside the gymnasium, collapsed against a row of lockers, her carefully styled hair disheveled, her face streaked with tears. Sofia. Jake's voice was gentle as he approached, his own graduation gown rustling. Hey, it's okay. It's not okay. Sofia's voice was raw. Nothing's okay. My entire life is a lie, Jake. Everything I thought I knew. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to block out the world. That's not true. Jake sat beside her on the floor, not caring about his gown or the formal setting. You're still you. You're still the smartest person I know. Still the girl who tutored half our class in calculus. Still the person who organized the food drive that collected 3,000 cans. But I'm not his daughter. The words came out as a broken whisper. All this time, I thought. I look like him, you know? Everyone always said I had his stubborn streak, his work ethic. Maybe you do. Maybe that stuff isn't about blood. Sofia looked at him through her tears. How can you be so calm about this? Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He'd never told Sofia about his own family situation. Had never found the right moment to explain that he understood questions of identity and belonging better than most. Because I was adopted, he said simply. My birth parents gave me up when I was 3. I don't remember them at all. Sofia stared at him. You never told me. It never seemed important. The Morrisons are my family. They chose me. They raised me. They love me. That's what matters. Before Sofia could respond, they heard David's voice echoing down the hallway as he searched for her. Sofia! Sofia! Where are you? She scrambled to her feet, Jake helping her steady herself. I can't face him right now. I can't look at him and wonder what's real and what's not. He's still the man who raised you, Jake said quietly. That hasn't changed. But as David rounded the corner and saw his daughter, the child he'd loved unconditionally for 18 years, Sofia turned away from him, unable to meet his eyes. Sweetheart. David's voice broke on the word. Please, let me explain. Explain? What? Sofia's voice was small and lost. That my whole life is built on a lie? That every time you called me your daughter, you were what? Pretending? No. David's denial was fierce and immediate. No, Sofia. You are my daughter. You've always been my daughter. This doesn't change that. But I'm not, am I? Not really. Sofia finally looked at him, and David saw his own pain reflected in her eyes. There's some stranger out there who's my actual father, and you're just the man who got stuck raising his kid. That's not… David's voice caught. I chose to be your father every single day. That has to count for something. Does it? Sofia's question hung in the air like an accusation. Because right now, I don't know what anything means anymore. Behind David, the rest of the family had followed him into the hallway. Carmen's face was etched with worry. Roberto looked ready to commit violence, and Elena appeared smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of what she'd done. We should take this somewhere private, Carmen said, her teacher instincts kicking in as she noticed other families beginning to filter out of the gymnasium. People are watching. She was right. The ceremony had officially ended, and graduates and families were emerging from the gym. Some stared openly at the Martinez family drama, others whispered among themselves, and a few were still recording with their phones. The parking lot, Roberto suggested. We can… No. Sofia's voice was stronger now, fueled by exhaustion and overwhelming emotion. I'm not doing this here. I'm not giving everyone in town more of a show. She started walking toward the exit, her graduation gown trailing behind her. Jake followed immediately, unwilling to leave her alone in her crisis. Sofia, wait, Elena called desperately. Please, let me explain. Explain? Sofia spun around, her composure finally cracking. Completely. You want to explain how you've been lying to me my entire life? How you let me give a speech about family and truth while sitting on the biggest lie of all? Elena flinched as if she'd been slapped. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? Sofia's laugh was bitter and broken. You just humiliated our entire family in front of hundreds of people. You ruined my graduation, Dad's reputation, everything. What exactly were you protecting me from? From him, Elena whispered. From Marcus. He was going to contact you and I couldn't… I thought, if the truth came out first… Stop! David's voice cut through Elena's explanation like a whip. Just stop talking. You've done enough damage for one day. Around them, the hallway was emptying as families made their way to cars and graduation parties. The Martinez family stood, in their bubble of devastation, each member processing the earthquake that had just shattered their world. Marcus Chen emerged from the gymnasium, his distinguished features carefully composed despite the turmoil he felt inside. This wasn't how he'd wanted Sofia to learn about him. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to happen. He approached the group slowly, his hands visible and non-threatening, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Excuse me, he said quietly. I believe I owe you all an explanation. David's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto the stranger who had somehow become the catalyst for his family's destruction. Even in his emotional state, David could see the resemblance. Something in the shape of Marcus's eyes that echoed Sofia's features. You must be Marcus, David said, his voice deadly calm. Dr. Marcus Chen, the man replied, extending his hand in a gesture that David ignored. And you must be David Martinez, the man who raised my daughter. The words hit like a physical blow. Sofia made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp, while David felt his world shift on its axis once again. Your daughter, David repeated slowly. Biologically speaking, Marcus clarified quickly, seeing the pain in David's eyes. But I understand. No. David's voice rose, his carefully controlled composure finally cracking. You don't understand. Anything. You understand nothing about what you've just destroyed. Security guards appeared at the end of the hallway, drawn by the raised voices and gathering crowd. Principal Morrison was right behind them, his face flushed with the embarrassment of having his graduation ceremony turned into a Jerry Springer episode. Perhaps this conversation should continue elsewhere,
the principal suggested diplomatically. But the damage was done.
The Martinez family, whatever that meant now, stood in the ruins of what should have been Sofia's greatest triumph, surrounded by strangers and scattered with the debris of 18 years of carefully constructed lies. As they finally made their way to the parking lot, phone cameras following their retreat, David couldn't shake the image of Sofia's diploma lying forgotten on the gymnasium stage, abandoned in the chaos of Elena's revelation. Just like everything else he'd thought he knew about his life. The parking lot felt like a battlefield after the war had ended. Families drove away with their graduates, heading to celebration dinners and parties, while the Martinez family stood, fractured among the scattered cars, each member isolating in their own bubble of shock and pain. David's hands trembled as he fumbled with his truck keys. The simple act of unlocking his vehicle seemed impossible when his entire identity had just been called into question. Carmen appeared at his elbow, her weathered hand covering his. "Mijo, you shouldn't drive like this." "I'm fine, Mom." The lie tasted bitter in his mouth. Nothing about him was fine. Everything he'd believed about himself, about his family, about the last 18 years of his life, had been revealed as an elaborate deception. "No, you're not." Carmen's voice carried the gentle authority of a woman who'd seen her share of family crises. "Roberto will drive your truck. I'll take you home." "I can't go home." David's voice was hollow. "That house. Every room has memories of her, of us. How do I go back there knowing it was all built on lies?" Sofia sat in Jake's car 20 feet away, her graduation gown crumpled around her like a deflated balloon. Through the windshield, David could see her shoulders shaking with sobs that Jake was trying to comfort. The sight of his daughter was she still his daughter? In such pain made his chest feel like it was caving in. Elena stood by her Mercedes, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in rapid, hushed Spanish to someone David assumed was her sister. Her perfect appearance had dissolved into smeared makeup and disheveled hair, making her look fragile and desperate. When she ended the call, she approached David with the hesitant movements of someone expecting to be attacked. "David, please, let me explain." "Explain?" David turned to face her, and Elena stepped back at the raw fury in his eyes. "Explain how you let me believe for 18 years that Sofia was mine. Explain how you watched me sacrifice everything for her, my time, my money, my dreams, while knowing I was raising another man's child. She is yours." Elena's voice cracked. "Biology doesn't change what you are to her." "Bullshit." The profanity felt good, felt like the only honest thing he could say. "You made me a fool, Elena. A complete fucking fool." Roberto stepped between them, his protective instincts flaring. "Back off, Elena. You've done enough damage for one lifetime." "You don't understand," Elena said desperately. "Marcus was going to contact her. He hired a private investigator, found out where she was going to college. I couldn't let Sofia find out that way." "So you decided to destroy her graduation instead?" Carmen's voice could have frozen water. "You decided to humiliate my son, in front of the entire community?" Dr. Marcus Chen had been standing apart from the family conflict, recognizing that his presence would only inflame an already volatile situation. But Elena's mention of the private investigator prompted him to step forward. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "Mrs. Martinez," he said carefully to Carmen, "I never intended for any of this to happen. I hired the investigator only to confirm what I suspected, not to disrupt Sofia's life." David whirled on him. "You suspected? How the hell did you suspect anything?" Marcus's composure faltered slightly. "I saw Elena at a medical conference 3 months ago. She didn't see me, but I recognized her immediately. When I learned she had an 18-year-old daughter..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The timing made me wonder." "Wonder?" David's voice rose again. "You wondered if you'd knocked up my wife?" "Ex-wife," Elena corrected automatically, then immediately regretted it when David's expression darkened further. "The marriage was already in trouble when it happened," Elena continued desperately. "We were separated, David. You'd moved out, remember? Those 3 months when we weren't even speaking." David's memory reluctantly supplied the details. The fight about money that had escalated until he'd grabbed some clothes and moved in with Roberto. The weeks of stubborn silence while their marriage festered. Elena's sudden announcement that she was pregnant. Her tearful plea for him to come home. "I thought the baby would save us," Elena whispered. "When I found out I was pregnant, I thought it was a sign that we were meant to work things out, except it wasn't my baby." The words felt like broken glass in David's throat. "I didn't know," Elena said quietly. "I honestly didn't know for sure. The timing. It could have been either of you." Roberto made a sound of disgust. "Either of them? Jesus, Elena, how many guys were you sleeping with?" "Rob," Carmen warned, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus stepped forward again, his medical training evident in his calm demeanor despite the chaos around him. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. Sofia is clearly in distress, and this public setting isn't helping anyone." As if summoned by his words, Sofia emerged from Jake's car. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying, her graduation gown twisted around her legs. She looked younger than her 18 years, vulnerable and lost. "I want to go home," she announced to no one in particular. "Which home?" The question slipped out before David could stop it, and he immediately hated himself for the cruelty of it. Sofia flinched as if he'd struck her. "I guess that's the question, isn't it? Do I even have a home anymore?" "Of course you do," Carmen said firmly, stepping toward her granddaughter. "You always have a home with your abuela." "But I'm not really your granddaughter, am I?" Sofia's voice was small and broken. "If David isn't my father, then you're not my grandmother. And Roberto isn't my uncle, and—" "Stop." Carmen's voice cut through Sofia's spiral with fierce authority. "I don't care what some DNA test might say. You are my granddaughter. You are Roberto's niece. You are part of this family because we choose you to be, not because of some scientific chart." Sofia's composure cracked again, and she moved toward Carmen, who enveloped her in a fierce hug. Over Sofia's head, Carmen's eyes met David's, sending him a clear message. Whatever his own pain, Sofia needed stability right now. Jake approached the group tentatively. "Mr. Martinez? Mrs. Martinez?" He addressed both David and Elena. "Maybe Sofia should come stay with my family tonight. Give everyone some space to process this." "No." David's response was immediate and instinctive. "She's not going anywhere." "David," Elena said quietly. "Maybe Jake's right. Maybe we all need—" "She's staying with family." David's voice brooked no argument. "She's coming home with me." "Are you sure that's wise?" Marcus interjected carefully. "This is a traumatic situation for a young person. Perhaps some neutral ground—" "Don't." David's voice was dangerously quiet. "Don't you dare tell me what's best for my daughter." "She's my daughter too," Marcus said, and the parking lot fell silent. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sofia lifted her head from Carmen's shoulder, her eyes moving between the two men who were claiming her as their own. "I don't want to be anyone's daughter right now," she said finally. "I just want to disappear." "You can't disappear from this, sweetheart," Elena said softly. "We need to figure out how to move forward." "Move forward?" Sofia's laugh was bitter. "Move forward to what? A nice, awkward custody arrangement with my new daddy?" She gestured toward Marcus. "Family dinners where we pretend this is all normal?" Marcus flinched at her tone. "Sofia, I don't expect anything from you. I just want the chance to—" "To what? Make up for 18 years? Be my father?" Sofia's voice was rising again. "I already have a father. I've had one my whole life." She looked at David, and he saw a flicker of the little girl who used to run to him when she had nightmares, who'd called him daddy, until she decided she was too grown up for such childish names. "Do I still?" she asked quietly. "Do I still have a father?" The question gutted him. David wanted to say yes, wanted to promise that nothing had changed, that he would always be her father regardless of biology. But the words stuck in his throat, tangled up with his own sense of betrayal and loss. His hesitation was answer enough. Sofia's face crumpled and she turned away from him. "I want to go to Jake's," she said firmly.
I can't deal with any of this right now. Sofia, David started. Please. Her voice was barely a whisper. Just, please, let me go. Roberto stepped forward, reading the situation with the clarity of someone not emotionally involved. Jake, can your parents handle having Sofia tonight? Of course, Jake said immediately. My mom's been through this kind of thing before. She'll understand. Carmen nodded slowly. It might be for the best, mijo. Give everyone time to think. David felt like he was losing her all over again, watching Sofia walk away from him just hours after he'd watched her graduate. But he could see the exhaustion in her face, the way she was holding herself together through sheer willpower. Okay, he said finally. But tomorrow, we talk. All of us. Sofia nodded without looking at him. Jake guided her toward his car, his arm protectively around her shoulders. As they drove away, David felt a piece of his heart break off and follow them. Elena approached him one more time, her face streaked with tears and mascara. David, I know you hate me right now, but we need to discuss— No. David's voice was flat and final. We don't need to discuss anything. You've said enough for one day. He turned toward his truck, where Roberto was waiting with the keys. Behind him, he heard Elena's car door slam and her engine start. Marcus lingered in the parking lot, clearly uncertain about what to do next. You should go, Carmen told the doctor quietly. This family needs time to heal before we can figure out where you fit. Marcus nodded, reaching into his jacket pocket. Could you give this to Sofia when she's ready? He handed Carmen a sealed envelope. It's just a letter. Nothing demanding, nothing that requires a response. Just information about me, about her medical history, things she might want to know. Carmen accepted the envelope with a nod. I'll make sure she gets it. As Marcus walked away, Carmen joined David and Roberto at the truck. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just a few stragglers and the custodial staff beginning to clean up the debris of graduation day. Take me to Mom's house, David said to Roberto. I can't go home yet. As they drove through the suburban, streets where David had lived his entire life, past the schools Sofia had attended and the parks where they'd played, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was a stranger in his own town. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. His phone buzzed with text messages, friends and family who'd heard about the disaster at graduation, offering support or asking for explanations. David turned the phone off. He wasn't ready to explain something he didn't understand himself. At Carmen's house, the small bungalow where David had grown up, he found himself gravitating toward his old bedroom. The space had been converted into Carmen's sewing room years ago, but she kept a daybed there for when the grandkids visited. David sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the walls covered with family photos. Pictures of him and Roberto as children, wedding photos from his marriage to Elena, countless images of Sofia growing up. In every photo, she looked like she belonged, like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But now he looked closer, searching for signs he'd missed. Did her eyes really look like Elena's? Or did they echo someone else's features? Was that stubborn tilt to her chin really a Martinez trait, or was he seeing what he'd wanted to see? His phone rang, Elena's number. David let it go to voicemail, then immediately deleted the message without listening to it. Outside his window, the sun was setting on what should have been one of the best days of his life. Instead, it felt like the end of everything he'd thought he knew about himself. 18 years of fatherhood, questioned by 18 words from a desperate woman's mouth. The cruelest part was that he still loved Sofia exactly the same. DNA didn't change the fact that she was the most important person in his world, but now he had to figure out what that love meant, and whether it was enough to rebuild what Elena's revelation had destroyed. 3 days had passed since graduation, and David hadn't slept more than a few hours total. He sat at Carmen's kitchen table, staring at the business card Dr. Patricia Williams had given him. Family therapist, it read in simple, professional font. Carmen had insisted he call after Sofia suffered what the school counselor diplomatically termed an emotional episode during what should have been her final week. She needs professional help, mijo, Carmen had said firmly. This is bigger than what we can handle on our own. The appointment was scheduled for this afternoon, a family session that would include David, Sofia, and Elena. Marcus had respectfully declined Carmen's suggestion that he attend.
Recognizing that his presence would likely do more harm than good at this stage, David's phone buzzed with a text from Roberto. Lab called. DNA results ready for pickup. Want me to go? His brother had been handling the logistics of the paternity test, sparing David the clinical details. 3 cheek swabs collected at a medical facility downtown. His, Sofia's, and Marcus's. Simple samples that would either confirm his worst fears or restore his sense of reality. No, David typed back. I need to face this myself. The genetics lab occupied a sterile suite in a medical complex across town. David had never imagined he'd find himself in such a place, sitting across from a genetic counselor who spoke in measured professional tones about paternity indices and probability percentages. The results are conclusive, the counselor explained, sliding the official report across the desk. Based on the DNA analysis, David Martinez is not the biological father of Sofia Martinez. The words hit him like a physical blow, even though he'd been preparing for this outcome. Seeing it in black and white, backed by scientific certainty, made it real in a way that Elena's dramatic revelation hadn't quite achieved. The probability of paternity is less than 0.01%, the counselor continued. Dr. Chen, however, shows a 99-97% probability of being Sofia's biological father. David stared at the numbers, the charts, the cold scientific evidence that his 18 years of fatherhood had been built on a biological lie. But as he sat there, something unexpected happened. Instead of the crushing devastation he'd anticipated, he felt something else entirely. Clarity. Can I ask you something? David said to the counselor. Of course. In your experience, how important is this? He gestured to the report. I mean, really. How much does DNA matter when it comes to being a parent? The counselor paused, clearly choosing her words carefully. That's not really a scientific question, Mr. Martinez. Biology tells us about genetic relationships, but parenting. That's about much more than genetics. David nodded, folding the report and putting it in his jacket pocket. For the first time since graduation day, he felt like he could breathe properly. An hour later, he sat in Dr. Williams's office, a space deliberately designed to feel comfortable rather than clinical. Soft lighting, earth tones, and strategically placed tissue boxes created an atmosphere of safety that David found oddly reassuring. Sofia arrived with Jake, who waited in the reception area while she entered the therapy room. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes testament to her own sleepless nights. When Elena appeared 5 minutes later, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Thank you all for coming, Dr. Williams began, her voice warm but professional. I know this is an incredibly difficult situation for your family. Is it still a family? Sofia asked quietly, the first words she'd spoken directly in David's presence since graduation day. That's one of the things we're here to explore, Dr. Williams replied. Sofia, can you tell me what you're feeling right now? Confused. Sofia's voice was barely above a whisper. Angry, betrayed, like everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. David's instinct was to comfort her, to promise that nothing fundamental had changed. But Dr. Williams had warned him about rushing to provide reassurance before Sofia had a chance to express her pain. Those are completely understandable feelings, the therapist acknowledged. David, what about you? David paused, surprised by the question. He'd been so focused on Sofia's trauma that he hadn't fully processed his own emotional response. I'm angry at Elena for lying. I'm hurt that Sofia might not want me as her father anymore. But I'm also... He looked directly at Sofia. I'm also sure that being your dad for 18 years was the best thing I've ever done, and I don't want to lose that. Sofia's eyes filled with tears. But you're not really my dad. Says who? David's response was immediate and fierce. Some lab report? Sofia, I was there when you took your first steps. I taught you to ride a bike. I stayed up all night when you had pneumonia in 3rd grade. I helped you with calculus homework and drove you to soccer practice and cheered louder than anyone else. At every school play. How does a piece of paper change any of that? Because it means you didn't choose me, Sofia said, her voice breaking. It means you were tricked into loving me. The words hung in the air like an accusation. David felt his heart shatter completely.
not for himself, but for the pain in his daughter's voice. "No," he said firmly. "No, Sofia. I chose to love you. Every single day. When your mom and I got divorced, I could have walked away. Lots of men do. But I fought for joint custody. I made sure you knew you always had a home with me. I chose to be your father then, and I'm choosing it now." Elena had been silent throughout this exchange, but now she spoke up. "David, I need to explain." "No." Dr. Williams intervened gently. "Elena, I appreciate that you want to provide context, but right now we need to focus on David and Sofia's relationship. Your explanations can wait." David pulled the lab report from his pocket and set it on the coffee table between them. "These are the DNA results," he said simply. "They confirm that Marcus Chen is your biological father." Sofia stared at the folded papers like they might explode. "I don't want to see them." "You don't have to, because they don't change anything that matters." David leaned forward, his voice intense. "Sofia, do you remember when you were 7, and you asked me why some kids at school lived with just one parent?" Sofia nodded slowly. "I told you that families come in all different shapes, but the important thing was that every kid deserves someone who loves them unconditionally, someone who shows up, who's there for the good times and the bad times, who helps them become the best version of themselves." "I remember," Sofia whispered. "I meant every word of that then, and I mean it now. You are my daughter because I choose to be your father. Because we've built a relationship based on 18 years of shared experiences. Because when I think about my greatest accomplishment in life, it's not the houses I've built or the projects I've completed. It's watching you grow into the amazing young woman you are today." Sofia was crying openly now. "But what if? What if you only feel that way because you thought I was yours? What if deep down, knowing the truth changes how you see me?" David stood up and moved to the chair beside Sofia's, taking her hands in his calloused ones. "Look at me," he said gently. When she met his eyes, he continued, "In the last 3 days, since I've known the truth, have you felt less important to me? Have I treated you differently?" "No," Sofia admitted. "That's because nothing has changed in here." David placed his hand over his heart. "You're still the kid who brought me breakfast in bed every Father's Day. You're still the teenager who called me crying from your first college party because you missed home. You're still my Sofia." "But legally?" Sofia started. "I don't care about legally," David interrupted. "I care about really. And really, you're my daughter in every way. That matters." Dr. Williams had been observing their interaction with professional interest. "Sofia, how does it feel to hear David say these things? Like maybe." Sofia paused, searching for the right words. "Like maybe I've been so focused on what I might be losing that I haven't thought about what I'm not losing. Which is? Him." Sofia looked at David with something approaching hope. "I'm not losing him." "Only if you don't want to," David said quietly. "The choice is yours, Sofia. It's always been yours." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Dr. Williams spoke again. "David, you mentioned that you're angry with Elena. Can you explore that feeling?" David's jaw tightened. "She had 18 years to tell me the truth. 18 years to let me make an informed choice about my life, my relationship with Sofia, everything. Instead, she let me live a lie." "But would you have made a different choice?" Dr. Williams asked. "If you'd known from the beginning that Sofia wasn't biologically yours, would you have walked away?" The question caught David off guard. He thought about the man he'd been at 27, young, struggling financially, dealing with a troubled marriage. Would that version of himself have had the emotional maturity to raise another man's child? "I don't know," he admitted. "I'd like to think I would have stayed, but I was different then. Less mature, more focused on my own problems." "So Elena's deception, while wrong, might have protected something precious," Dr. Williams observed carefully. "That doesn't make it right," David said firmly, "and it doesn't excuse the way she chose to reveal the truth. At Sofia's graduation in front of everyone? That was cruel." Sofia spoke up suddenly. She was scared.
Both David and Dr. Williams looked at her in surprise.
I'm still angry at her, Sofia continued, but I've been thinking about why she did it that way. She said Dr. Chen was going to contact me. She was panicking.
That's very insightful, Dr. Williams said. Can you hold space for both feelings? Anger at how your mother handled this, and understanding of why she might have acted out of fear. Sofia nodded slowly. I think so. It doesn't make what she did okay, but it makes it more human. David felt a surge of pride at his daughter's emotional wisdom. Even in crisis, she was capable of nuanced thinking and empathy. That's very mature of you. I learned it from you, Sofia said simply. You always taught me that people are complicated, that someone can make bad choices without being a bad person. The session continued for another 30 minutes, with Dr. Williams helping them identify concrete steps for moving forward. They would need more sessions, both individually and as a family. Elena would need to take responsibility for her choices and work on rebuilding trust, and they would need to figure out how, or if, Marcus fit into their family structure. As they prepared to leave, Sofia turned to David. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you going to keep the DNA results? David pulled the folded papers from his pocket and handed them to her. They're yours if you want them, but I don't need them. Sofia took the papers and, without opening them, tore them in half, then in half again. She deposited the pieces in Dr. Williams's trash can. I don't need them either, she said. I know who my father is. As they walked out of the office together, David felt something he hadn't experienced since graduation day. Hope. The road ahead would be difficult, and there were still conversations to be had and relationships to rebuild. But the most important thing, his bond with Sofia, felt stronger than ever. Not because of biology, but because of choice. Not because of the past, but because of the future they would build together. 1 week had passed since the therapy session, and Sofia found herself sitting in Dr. Williams's office again, this time alone. The individual sessions had been David's idea, a way for her to process her feelings without worrying about protecting anyone else's emotions. How are you sleeping? Dr. Williams asked, noting the shadows under Sofia's eyes. Better than the first few days, but not great. Sofia tucked her legs under herself in the comfortable chair. I keep having these dreams where I'm on stage, at graduation, but every time I look out at the audience, the faces keep changing. Sometimes it's Dad cheering, sometimes it's this stranger, Dr. Chen, and sometimes there's no one there at all. What do you think that represents? Sofia was quiet for a moment, picking at the hem of her shirt. I guess uncertainty about who I belong to, or maybe who I really am without all these family connections I thought I understood. Tell me about your identity outside of your family relationships. The question surprised Sofia. She'd been so focused on the fractures in her family structure that she hadn't considered herself as an independent entity. She started, then paused. I'm Sofia Martinez. I'm 18. I'm starting college in the fall with a partial scholarship to study biochemistry. I volunteer at the animal shelter. I tutor kids in math. I make the world's best chocolate chip cookies, according to my friend Jake. Those things haven't changed. No, Sofia realized. They haven't. I'm still all of those things no matter who my biological father is. Dr. Williams smiled. That's significant progress, Sofia. When we first met, you felt like your entire identity was in question. It still is in some ways, but maybe not the important ways. Sofia shifted in her chair. Dr. Williams, can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I may not answer, depending on what it is. Do you have kids? I do. 2 daughters. If you found out tomorrow that one of them wasn't biologically yours, would it change how you felt about her? Dr. Williams considered the question carefully. That's hypothetical, but honestly, I can't imagine it would. The love I have for my daughters is built on thousands of small moments. Bedtime stories, scraped knees I've bandaged, proud moments at school plays, fights about curfew. Biology contributed to their existence, but not to my love for them. Sofia nodded, feeling something settle in her chest. That's what Dad said, too. Meanwhile, across town, David was having his own reckoning. He'd returned to work at the construction site, where his crew had treated him with the awkward kindness reserved for someone recovering from a public family disaster. Word had spread quickly through their small community, and David found himself the subject of whispered conversations and sideways glances. "Hey, boss," called Tommy Hernandez, one of his younger workers. "You okay? You've been staring at that blueprint for 10 minutes. David looked down, realizing he'd been holding the plans upside down. "Yeah, just tired." "Look, man," Tommy said, lowering his voice. "I don't know if it helps, but my dad raised my sister and me after our mom split. Found out years later that my sister wasn't his. Didn't change nothing between them. Family's about more than DNA, you know?" The unexpected wisdom from his 24-year-old employee caught David off guard. "Thanks, Tommy. That actually does help. Besides," Tommy grinned, "you raised a hell of a smart kid. That's your doing. Blood or no blood." As David went back to work, he found himself thinking about all the ways Sofia had shaped him as much as he'd shaped her. Her curiosity had pushed him to read more, to think deeper about the world. Her academic achievements had motivated him to take night classes to get his contractor's license. Her compassion had taught him patience he'd never possessed before becoming a father. The relationship had never been one-sided. They'd grown together. Elena, meanwhile, was facing consequences of a different kind. She sat in her real estate office, staring at the email that had just arrived from her biggest client of the year. "Dear Ms. Vasquez," it read. "Given recent events and the negative publicity surrounding your family situation, we feel it's best to seek representation elsewhere. Please consider our contract terminated effective immediately." It was the third client she'd lost since graduation day. The video of her outburst had gone viral in their small community, shared across Facebook and discussed in every coffee shop and restaurant in town. Some people were sympathetic, understanding that family situations could be complicated. Others were judgmental, viewing her public revelation as evidence of poor character and questionable decision-making. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Maria. "Still think you handled this the right way?" Elena stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The honest answer was no. She regretted everything about how she'd revealed the truth. But she couldn't take it back, and she was slowly coming to understand that the method of revelation wasn't the real problem. The lie itself had been the poison that had infected everything. She called Dr. Williams to schedule her own individual session. That afternoon, Marcus Chen sat in his office at the hospital, reviewing patient charts but finding it difficult to concentrate. His secretary had fielded 3 calls from reporters wanting to interview him about the graduation day drama, as one particularly tactless journalist had dubbed it. He'd declined all interviews, but the attention made him deeply uncomfortable. He'd sent Sofia a letter, as promised, along with copies of her medical history that might be relevant for college health forms, but he'd heard nothing back, and he was beginning to wonder if his attempt to be part of her life had been a terrible mistake. A knock on his office door interrupted his brooding. "Come in." Carmen Martinez stood in the doorway, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. He'd been expecting this conversation, but that didn't make it any easier. "Mrs. Martinez, please, come in." Carmen entered with the measured steps of someone who'd come with a purpose. She was dressed simply but neatly, and her silver hair was pulled back in a style that suggested she'd taken care with her appearance for this meeting. "Dr. Chen," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "We need to talk, of course. I've been hoping someone from Sofia's family would reach out." "That girl is suffering," Carmen said without preamble. "She's questioning everything about herself, about her place in the world. My son is barely sleeping, barely eating. And it's all because you decided you needed to know if you had a daughter." Marcus flinched at the accusation. "Mrs. Martinez, I understand you're angry." "I'm not angry, doctor. I'm protective. There's a difference." Carmen's voice was steady but firm. "I want to understand what you're hoping to accomplish here." The directness of the question caught Marcus off guard. He'd spent weeks thinking about what he wanted, but no one had asked him to articulate it so clearly. "I want to know her," he said simply. "For 18 years, I've wondered about the child that might have resulted from my relationship with Elena. When I saw Elena at that conference and learned she had an 18-year-old daughter, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And what did you think would happen? That you'd show up and she'd be thrilled to have a second father? No, Marcus said quickly. I hope to approach this carefully, maybe through Elena. I never wanted it to become public the way it did. Carmen studied him for a long moment. What do you know about Sofia? I know she's valedictorian. I know she's starting college in the fall. I know she's been accepted into a competitive biochemistry program. Marcus paused. I know she's beautiful and intelligent and has been raised by people who clearly love her very much. She wants to be a pediatric surgeon, Carmen said quietly. Like you. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. I didn't know. She decided in middle school, after volunteering at a children's hospital. Said she wanted to help kids the way someone had helped her when she broke her arm falling off her bike. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Mrs. Martinez, I don't want to disrupt her life. I've missed 18 years. I'd like the chance to know the person she's become. And what are you willing to sacrifice for that chance? The question surprised him. I'm sorry? My son has been Sofia's father for 18 years. He's the one who sat up with her when she was sick, who helped her with homework, who taught her to drive. He's the one she calls when she's scared or excited or confused. What are you willing to sacrifice to make sure that doesn't change? Marcus began to understand what Carmen was really asking. You want to know if I'm going to try to replace David. I want to know if you understand that you can't. I do understand that. Marcus leaned forward, his voice earnest. Mrs. Martinez, I'm not trying to be Sofia's father. That position is already filled, and from everything I've seen, David Martinez has done an excellent job. I'm just hoping to find some place in her life, even if it's small. Carmen nodded slowly. What kind of place? I don't know. A friend, maybe. Someone she can talk to about medicine if she wants. Someone who can share her genetic medical history, answer questions about her biological background if she has them. Marcus paused. Someone who can love her without trying to take anything away from the family that raised her. That's a wise answer, Doctor. Marcus, please. Marcus. Carmen stood to leave. Sofia got your letter. She hasn't opened it yet, but she kept it. That might not seem like much, but it's something. As Carmen reached the door, Marcus called, after her. Mrs. Martinez, thank you. For what? For not telling me to stay away from her. For coming here to size me up instead of just writing me off. Carmen turned back to him with something that might have been the beginning of a smile. I don't write people off easily, Marcus. But I also don't let anyone hurt my family without consequences. The jury's still out on which category you fall into. After she left, Marcus sat in his office thinking about the conversation. He understood. Now that his relationship with Sofia, if one developed at all, would have to be built carefully, with respect for the family structure that already existed. It wouldn't be the father-daughter relationship he'd sometimes fantasized about, but it might be something real and meaningful nonetheless. That evening, Sofia sat at her desk at Jake's house, where she'd been staying since graduation day. In front of her lay Marcus's letter, still unopened. Beside it sat college orientation materials and course selection forms that needed to be completed. You're going to stare a hole through that envelope, Jake observed from where he was sprawled on his bed, supposedly reading but actually watching Sofia wrestle with her decision. I know. Sofia picked up the letter, then put it down again. What if it changes everything? What if it doesn't? Sofia looked at him in surprise. You think I should read it? I think you should do whatever feels right for you. But Sofia, you've already been through the worst part. You know the truth about your biology. What could be in that letter? That's scarier than what you've already faced? Sofia considered this, then slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in careful script, along with several medical forms. Dear Sofia, she read aloud. I hope you don't mind me writing to you. I wanted to introduce myself properly and share some information you might find useful as you start college. My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm a pediatric surgeon at Children's Hospital. I'm also your biological father. Sofia continued reading, and with each paragraph, something in her chest began to loosen. The letter wasn't demanding or presumptuous. It was respectful, informative, and kind. Marcus shared basic information about his background, his medical history, and his family. He talked about his work with children and his love of classical music. He mentioned that he'd been hoping to study biochemistry in college too, before switching to pre-med. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "I don't expect anything from you, Sofia. I know you have a father who loves you and a family that supports you. I just wanted you to know that you have another person in the world who cares about your well-being and would be honored to know you, in whatever capacity feels comfortable for you. If you never want to meet me, I understand completely. If you'd like to ask questions or just talk sometime, I'm here. The choice is entirely yours." Sofia set the letter down and looked at Jake. "He seems nice." Yeah? Yeah. Not trying to be my dad or anything. Just a person who cares about me. How does that feel?" Sofia thought about it. Scary still, but also kind of good. Like maybe having more people who care about me isn't actually a threat to the people who already do. As she prepared for bed that night, Sofia found herself thinking about the future differently than she had since graduation day. Instead of feeling like her foundation had crumbled, she was beginning to see that maybe it had just expanded. She still had questions to answer and relationships to rebuild, but for the first time in over a week, the questions felt manageable rather than overwhelming. Tomorrow, she decided, she would call David and ask if he wanted to have lunch. Just the two of them, father and daughter, ready to figure out what came next. 2 weeks after the DNA test confirmation, Sofia finally felt ready to have lunch with David. They met at Rosita's, the small Mexican restaurant where they'd celebrated every one of her academic achievements since middle school. The familiar smell of fresh tortillas and the cheerful chaos of the lunch rush provided a comforting backdrop for what both knew would be a difficult conversation. "The usual?" David asked, though they both knew the answer. Sofia had ordered the same thing, chicken quesadillas with extra guac, for the past 6 years. "Some things never change," Sofia said with a small smile. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Sofia spoke again. "Dad, I've been thinking about what Dr. Williams said about family being a choice." "Yeah? I choose you." The words came out simply, but David felt them like a physical weight lifting from his shoulders. "I know the DNA says different, but you're my father. You're the one who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with calculus and drove me to soccer practice in the rain. That's what matters." David reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That means everything to me, sweetheart." "I want to meet him, though, Dr. Chen." Sofia's voice was tentative. "Not as a replacement for you, but just to know where I come from. Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense." David was surprised by how much he meant it. "You have every right to know your biological history. And it doesn't threaten you." David considered the question honestly. "A little, but not in the way I thought it would. I'm not afraid of losing you anymore, Sofia. What we have is bigger than biology." Their conversation was interrupted by David's phone buzzing insistently. Elena's name appeared on the screen, which was unusual. They'd barely spoken since the disaster at graduation, communicating only through terse text messages about Sofia's well-being. "You should answer it," Sofia said. "She's been calling me, too, but I haven't been ready to talk to her yet." David reluctantly accepted the call. "Elena, this isn't a good time." "David, please, I need to see you and Sofia today. Both of you. Together." Elena's voice was strained, almost frantic. "There's something else. Something I should have told you before." "Jesus, Elena. What now?" "I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me at Dr. Williams's office? I already called her. She can see us in an hour." David looked at Sofia, who had heard enough of the conversation to understand that their mother had another bombshell to drop. Sofia nodded grimly. "Fine. We'll be there." An hour later, they sat in Dr. Williams's office, the familiar space now feeling like a war room, where they processed one family crisis after another. Elena looked haggard, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. She'd lost weight since graduation, and her hands shook as she clutched a manila envelope. "Elena," Dr. Williams said gently, "why don't you tell us what's going on?" I lied. Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. "Not just about the paternity. About everything. The whole situation is more complicated than I told you." David felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Elena opened the manila envelope with trembling fingers, withdrawing several documents. "After Sofia was born, I did some research. About Marcus. About his family." She paused, gathering courage. "David, Marcus isn't just Sofia's biological father. He's my half-brother." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sofia made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. David's face went white. "What did you just say?" David's voice was dangerously quiet. "My mother had an affair when I was a teenager. She told me about it before she died. Said she'd had a son she gave up for adoption. Marcus Chen." Elena's words tumbled out in a rush. "I didn't know when Marcus and I were together. Neither of us knew. We met at a medical conference during my separation from David. He was using his adoptive name, and I had no idea who he really was." Dr. Williams leaned forward, her professional composure intact despite the shocking revelation. "Elena, you're saying that Marcus is your biological half-brother, and also Sofia's biological father?" "Yes." Elena's voice cracked. "When Marcus started asking questions about Sofia, when he hired that private investigator, I panicked. I couldn't let him find out the truth about our relationship. I couldn't let Sofia find out. So I thought if I made it seem like it was just about paternity, like David wasn't her father but Marcus was just some random guy I'd had an affair with." "You thought you could create a smaller scandal to hide a bigger one," Dr. Williams finished. Sofia had gone completely silent, her face pale as she processed what her mother was telling them. David stared at Elena with a mixture of horror and disgust. "So, let me get this straight," David said slowly. "You had an affair with your own half-brother, got pregnant, let me believe the baby was mine, and then when the truth was about to come out, you decided to blow up our daughter's graduation rather than face the real consequences of what you'd done." "I didn't know," Elena cried. "We didn't know we were related when it happened." "But you found out afterward," Sofia said, her voice hollow. "You found out, and you never told him. You let him spend all these years wondering about a daughter who's actually—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The biological reality was too disturbing to voice. "Sofia." Elena reached toward her daughter, who flinched away. "I was trying to protect everyone. If Marcus knew the truth, if you knew, it would destroy so many lives." "Instead, you just destroyed different lives," David said bitterly. "Mine, Sofia's, probably Marcus's too when he finds out." Dr. Williams intervened. "Elena, does Marcus know about this family connection?" "No, I never told him. When he started looking for Sofia, I tried to convince him to stay away, but I couldn't tell him why without revealing everything. So, he still doesn't know that Sofia is not just his biological daughter, but also his niece," Sofia whispered, finally able to say it. "I'm his niece." The room fell silent as the full implications sank in. Sofia wasn't just dealing with questions about her paternity. She was confronting the fact that her biological conception had involved incest, even if unknowing incest. "I think I'm going to be sick," Sofia said suddenly, bolting from the room. David started to follow her, but Dr. Williams held up a hand. "Let me go. You two need to process this first." Alone with Elena, David struggled to find words adequate for his rage. "How could you do this? How could you keep something like this secret?" "Because I was ashamed." Elena's composure finally cracked completely. "Because I was terrified." "Do you know what it's like to realize you've had a child with your own brother? Do you know what that does to a person? So, you decided to let me raise that child instead." "You love her," Elena shot back. "You've always loved her. I thought it was better for everyone if you just kept being her father and never had to know the truth." "That wasn't your choice to make, Elena. Not for me, not for Sofia, and definitely not for Marcus." David stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, life continued normally. People walking their dogs, children playing in the park across the street. Inside this room, another family's world had just imploded again. "Does anyone else know?" he asked. "My sister Maria suspects something. She was the one who found some of my mother's old letters after she died. But I never confirmed anything." Dr. Williams returned with Sofia, who looked shaky, but more composed. "How are you doing?" the therapist asked her. "I don't know," Sofia answered honestly. "This is a lot to process." "Sofia," Elena began, "I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand—" "Stop!" Sofia's voice was firm. "Mom, just stop talking for a minute. I need to think." She sat back down, but instead of her usual position curled in the chair, she sat straight, her posture defensive. "So my biological father is actually my uncle. My existence is the result of accidental incest, and you've been lying about this my entire life." "Sofia, I'm not finished." Sofia's voice carried an authority that surprised everyone in the room. "You had 18 years to figure out how to handle this situation. 18 years to find a way to tell the truth that wouldn't devastate everyone involved. Instead, you chose the most destructive possible way to reveal it." Elena was crying now, but Sofia continued relentlessly. "You ruined my graduation. You humiliated Dad in front of our entire community. You made me question everything about my identity and my place in the family. And you did it all to cover up an even bigger secret that you still haven't figured out how to handle." "I was scared," Elena whispered. "We're all scared, Mom. But being scared doesn't give you the right to make decisions for everyone else's lives." David looked at his daughter with amazement. In the space of 2 weeks, Sofia had grown from a confused teenager into a young woman, capable of holding her ground in an impossible situation. "What happens now?" Sofia asked Dr. Williams. "Does Dr. Chen need to know?" "That's not my decision to make," the therapist replied carefully. "But I think it's something you all need to consider very seriously." "He's been trying to build a relationship with Sofia based on being her father," David pointed out. "Don't you think he deserves to know the real situation before that goes any further?" "But telling him could destroy him," Elena protested. "Finding out that he unknowingly had a child with his own sister." "That's his burden to bear, not yours to manage," Sofia said quietly. "You've been making decisions about what other people can and can't handle for too long, Mom." As the session continued, they began to grapple with the practical implications of Elena's revelation. How do you tell a man that the daughter he's been hoping to know is actually his niece? How do you navigate a relationship with that kind of complicated biological reality? But as difficult as these questions were, David found himself feeling something unexpected: relief. Not about the disturbing nature of Sofia's conception, but about the confirmation that his instincts about Elena had been right all along. She was capable of deception on a scale he'd never imagined, and he was better off without her in his daily life. More importantly, Sofia was handling this crisis with remarkable maturity. Whatever else Elena had done wrong, she'd raised a daughter, capable of facing hard truths and making difficult decisions. As they prepared to leave the session, Sofia turned to Elena one final time. "Mom, I need some time before I can talk to you again. What you've done, it's going to take a while for me to process." "I understand," Elena said quietly. "And we need to tell Dr. Chen the truth. All of it. He deserves to know what he's really dealing with." Elena nodded, though David could see the terror in her eyes at the prospect of that conversation. Walking out to the parking lot, Sofia slipped her hand into David's. "Dad? Yeah? Thank you for being normal. Thank you for being the kind of father who shows up and tells the truth and doesn't keep devastating secrets." David squeezed her hand. "Thank you for being the kind of daughter who can handle anything life throws at her." As they drove home, both of them were quiet, processing the latest revelation in their ongoing family crisis. But for the first time since graduation day, David felt certain that whatever came next, he and Sofia would face it together. The truth, however complicated and painful, was finally out. Now they had to figure out what to do with it. 3 days. After Elena's devastating revelation, Dr. Williams had arranged the most difficult family session of her career. Marcus Chen sat in her office, having been told only that there were additional complications to discuss regarding his relationship with Sofia. He'd arrived early, his usual composed demeanor masking the anxiety he felt about this unexpected meeting. When David and Sofia entered together, followed by a visibly distraught Elena, Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The body language in the room suggested he was about to receive news that would change everything again. Dr. Chen. Dr. Williams began carefully, "Thank you for coming. I know this is unusual, but Elena has some additional information that affects your situation with Sofia." Marcus looked between the faces in the room, noting Sofia's pale complexion and David's grim expression. What kind of information? Elena sat rigidly in her chair, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Marcus, I need to tell you something about your family history, about why I panicked when you started looking for Sofia. I'm listening. Do you remember telling me about being adopted? About never knowing your birth family?" Marcus nodded slowly. "We talked about it that night we met. I told you I'd always wondered about my biological parents, but the records were sealed. I know who your birth mother was." Elena's words fell into the silence like stones into still water. "She was my mother too." The room went absolutely silent. Marcus stared at Elena, his mind refusing to process what she'd just said. "That's not possible," he said finally. Elena reached into her purse and withdrew a folder of documents. "My mother told me before she died. She'd had an affair in 1978, got pregnant, gave the baby up for adoption. A son. Born March 15th, 1978. Marcus's face went white. "That's my birthday." "Your birth name was Miguel Vasquez. The adoption agency changed it to Marcus Chen when you were placed with your family." Dr. Williams watched Marcus carefully as the information sank in. His breathing had become shallow, and she could see him working through the implications with the methodical precision of someone trained in crisis situations. "You're saying we're half-siblings," Marcus said slowly. "Yes. And Sofia is your daughter and your niece." David's voice was harsh with barely controlled anger. "Elena let both of you live in ignorance while she decided what was best for everyone." Marcus stood up abruptly, walking to the window. His back was to the room, but they could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "Marcus," Dr. Williams said gently, "what are you feeling right now?" "I don't know." His voice was strained. "Shock, disgust, confusion. I spent 2 decades as a pediatric surgeon, seeing the effects of genetic complications in children, and now I find out we—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Sofia spoke for the first time since the session began. "Dr. Chen, you didn't know. Neither of you knew." Marcus turned to face her, and Sofia was struck by how much he suddenly looked like Elena around the eyes. The family resemblance she'd never noticed before was now glaringly obvious. "That doesn't change the biological reality, Sofia. You're my daughter, yes, but you're also the product of an incestuous relationship. The genetic implications alone are minimal," Sofia interrupted. "I've been researching it since Mom told us. The risks for first-generation children from unknowing sibling relationships are much lower than most people think. I'm fine, Marcus. Physically, genetically, medically, I'm fine." Her use of his first name instead of Dr. Chen was not lost on anyone in the room. The revelation had shifted their relationship into territory where formal titles felt inappropriate. "Sofia's right," David added. "She's had genetic counseling as part of her college prep. There are no indicators of any problems." Marcus nodded absently, then focused on Elena with an intensity that made her shrink in her chair. "How long have you known?" "I figured it out when Sofia was 3. I found some of my mother's old papers when she died, and the dates matched up with what you told me about your adoption." 15 years. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "You've known for 15 years and said nothing. I was protecting—" "Don't," Marcus cut her off. "Don't say you were protecting anyone. You were protecting yourself from having to face the consequences of the truth." Dr. Williams intervened before the confrontation could escalate further. "Marcus, I know this is overwhelming. How can we help you process this? I need to understand something, Marcus said, looking directly at Sofia. What does this mean for us? I came into this hoping to build some kind of relationship with my daughter. Now I find out you're also my niece, and the whole foundation of that relationship is built on something that never should have happened. Sofia had been dreading this question, but she'd also been preparing for it. Over the past 3 days, she'd done more than just research the genetic implications. She'd thought deeply about what this revelation meant for her identity and her relationships. It means, she said carefully, that our biology is complicated. But it doesn't change the fact that you're a good person who wanted to know his daughter. It doesn't change the fact that I might want to know you too. But it does complicate things, David pointed out. The question is whether we can all handle that complication. Marcus sat back down, his composure slowly returning. Sofia, can I ask you something? Of course. When you look at me now, knowing what you know, what do you see? Sofia considered the question seriously. I see someone who's been hit, with information as devastating as what I was hit with on graduation day. I see someone who's trying to figure out how to be a good person in an impossible situation. I see someone who didn't choose this complication any more than I did. And do you still want me in your life? I think so, but differently than before. Not as a father figure. I have a father. And this situation with Mom has made me realize how much I value that relationship. But maybe as family. Complicated family, but family nonetheless. Marcus looked to David. And you're okay with that? David was quiet for a long moment. I'm okay with whatever Sofia wants, as long as everyone's honest going forward. No more secrets, no more protective lies. Agreed. Marcus turned back to Elena. But I need something from you. What? I need you to stay away from me. Completely. We can coordinate anything involving Sofia through David or Dr. Williams, but I can't have direct contact with you. Not after this. Elena's face crumpled. Marcus, I understand you're angry, but we're going to be connected through Sofia for the rest of our lives. No, Marcus said firmly. You and I are not connected. Sofia connects us, but there is no relationship between you and me. Not anymore. The harshness of his words hit Elena like a physical blow, but Sofia found herself nodding in agreement. I think that's probably for the best, Sofia said quietly, for everyone. Dr. Williams guided them through the practical implications of this new family structure. Marcus would need individual therapy to process the trauma of learning about his complicated biological connection to Sofia. Sofia would continue her own therapy to work through the ongoing revelations about her family. And they would all need to figure out how to maintain appropriate boundaries in this unprecedented situation. What about the rest of the family? David asked. My mother, my brother. They're going to need to know the truth eventually. And my family too, Marcus added. My adoptive parents, my sister. This affects everyone. One step at a time, Dr. Williams advised. Focus first on how the three of you are going to move forward together. The extended family conversations can happen once you've established a stable foundation. As the session wound down, Marcus made a request that surprised everyone. Sofia, would you be willing to have lunch with me? Just the two of us? I know this changes everything, but I'd still like to get to know you as a person. If you're comfortable with that. Sofia looked to David, who nodded encouragingly. I'd like that, she said. But can we agree on something first? What? Can we agree that we're going to be honest with each other about everything? No protective secrets, no managing each other's feelings. Just truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the office. I think I can handle that. Can you? I've been handling uncomfortable truths for weeks now. I'm getting pretty good at it. As they prepared to leave, Elena made one final attempt to address the situation. Sofia, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be, but I need you to know that everything I did because I love you. Sofia paused at the door, considering her response carefully. Mom, I believe that you love me, but love isn't enough if it's not paired with respect. You didn't respect My right to know the truth about my own life. You didn't respect Dad's right to make informed choices about his life. And you didn't respect Marcus's right to understand his own family history. She paused, her voice softening slightly. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I hope someday I'll be able to understand how you got so lost that you thought lying was the same as protecting people. Elena nodded through her tears, accepting the conditional nature of Sofia's words. As David and Sofia left the office, together they both felt the weight of how much their family had changed in just a few weeks. But they also felt something else. Relief that the truth, however complicated and painful, was finally out in the open. Dad? Sofia said as they reached his truck. Yeah? Thank you for being the kind of father who can handle the truth. All of it. David hugged her tightly. Thank you for being the kind of daughter who insists on it. Behind them, Marcus was helping Elena to her car, his medical training overriding his personal feelings enough to ensure she was safe to drive. But his body language made it clear that this was the last kindness he would show her. The road ahead would be difficult for all of them, but for the first time since graduation day, it felt like they were all walking on solid ground instead of the shifting sands of deception. Truth, they were learning, might be painful, but it was also the only foundation strong enough to build a real family on. 3 months had passed since the family therapy session that revealed the full truth about Sofia's parentage. 15 years. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. You've known for 15 years and said nothing. I was protecting... Don't. Marcus cut her off. Don't say you were protecting anyone. You were protecting yourself from having to face the consequences of the truth. Dr. Williams intervened before the confrontation could escalate further. Marcus, I know this is overwhelming. How can we help you process this? I need to understand something, Marcus said, looking directly at Sofia. What does this mean for us? I came into this hoping to build some kind of relationship with my daughter. Now I find out you're also my niece, and the whole foundation of that relationship is built on something that never should have happened. Sofia had been dreading this question, but she'd also been preparing for it. Over the past 3 days, she'd done more than just research the genetic implications. She'd thought deeply about what this revelation meant for her identity and her relationships. It means, she said carefully, that our biology is complicated. But it doesn't change the fact that you're a good person who wanted to know his daughter. It doesn't change the fact that I might want to know you too. But it does complicate things, David pointed out. The question is whether we can all handle that complication. Marcus sat back down, his composure slowly returning. Sofia, can I ask you something? Of course. When you look at me now, knowing what you know, what do you see? Sofia considered the question seriously. I see someone who's been hit, with information as devastating as what I was hit with on graduation day. I see someone who's trying to figure out how to be a good person in an impossible situation. I see someone who didn't choose this complication any more than I did. And do you still want me in your life? I think so, but differently than before. Not as a father figure. I have a father. And this situation with Mom has made me realize how much I value that relationship. But maybe as family. Complicated family, but family nonetheless. Marcus looked to David. And you're okay with that? David was quiet for a long moment. I'm okay with whatever Sofia wants, as long as everyone's honest going forward. No more secrets, no more protective lies. Agreed. Marcus turned back to Elena. But I need something from you. What? I need you to stay away from me. Completely. We can coordinate anything involving Sofia through David or Dr. Williams, but I can't have direct contact with you. Not after this. Elena's face crumpled. Marcus, I understand you're angry, but we're going to be connected through Sofia for the rest of our lives. No, Marcus said firmly. You and I are not connected. Sofia connects us, but there is no relationship between you and me. Not anymore. The harshness of his words hit Elena like a physical blow, but Sofia found herself nodding in agreement. I think that's probably for the best, Sofia said quietly. For everyone. Dr. Williams guided them through the practical implications of this new family structure. Marcus would need individual therapy to process the trauma of learning about his complicated biological connection to Sofia. Sofia would continue her own therapy to work through the ongoing revelations about her family. And they would all need to figure out how to maintain appropriate boundaries in this unprecedented situation. "What about the rest of the family?" David asked. "My mother, my brother. They're going to need to know the truth eventually." "And my family too," Marcus added. "My adoptive parents, my sister. This affects everyone." "One step at a time," Dr. Williams advised. "Focus first on how the three of you are going to move forward together. The extended family conversations can happen once you've established a stable foundation." As the session wound down, Marcus made a request that surprised everyone. "Sofia, would you be willing to have lunch with me? Just the two of us? I know this changes everything, but I'd still like to get to know you as a person. If you're comfortable with that." Sofia looked to David, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd like that," she said. "But can we agree on something first?" "What?" "Can we agree that we're going to be honest with each other about everything? No protective secrets, no managing each other's feelings. Just truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the office. "I think I can handle that. Can you?" "I've been handling uncomfortable truths for weeks now. I'm getting pretty good at it." As they prepared to leave, Elena made one final attempt to address the situation. "Sofia, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be, but I need you to know that everything I did because I love you." Sofia paused at the door, considering her response carefully. "Mom, I believe that you love me, but love isn't enough if it's not paired with respect. You didn't respect my right to know the truth about my own life. You didn't respect Dad's right to make informed choices about his life. And you didn't respect Marcus's right to understand his own family history." She paused, her voice softening slightly. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I hope someday I'll be able to understand how you got so lost that you thought lying was the same as protecting people." Elena nodded through her tears, accepting the conditional nature of Sofia's words. As David and Sofia left the office, together they both felt the weight of how much their family had changed in just a few weeks. But they also felt something else: relief that the truth, however complicated and painful, was finally out in the open. "Dad?" Sofia said as they reached his truck. "Yeah? Thank you for being the kind of father who can handle the truth. All of it." David hugged her tightly. "Thank you for being the kind of daughter who insists on it." Behind them, Marcus was helping Elena to her car, his medical training overriding his personal feelings enough to ensure she was safe to drive. But his body language made it clear that this was the last kindness he would show her. The road ahead would be difficult for all of them, but for the first time since graduation day, it felt like they were all walking on solid ground instead of the shifting sands of deception. Truth, they were learning, might be painful, but it was also the only foundation strong enough to build a real family on. 3 months had passed since the family therapy session that revealed the full truth about Sofia's parentage. The summer heat in their suburban town had been relentless, but as August drew to a close, there was a hint of autumn in the evening air, and with it, the approaching reality of Sofia's departure for college. David stood in Sofia's bedroom doorway, watching her pack. The room looked strange, half empty, with boxes stacked against the walls and gaps on the shelves where her books and trophies had been. In 2 days, they would drive to State University together, a 3-hour journey that would mark the beginning of Sofia's adult life. "You sure you have everything?" David asked, though they'd been through her packing list 3 times already. "Dad, you're hovering," Sofia said with gentle amusement. "I'm 18, not 8. I can pack for college." "I know, it's just—" David paused, leaning against the doorframe. "This summer went by so fast. I feel like we just figured everything out, and now you're leaving." Sofia looked up from the sweater she was folding. The past 3 months had been a period of careful reconstruction for their family. Weekly therapy sessions, difficult conversations, and gradual healing had helped. them all find their footing on more honest ground. I'm not disappearing, Dad. I'll be 3 hours away, not 3,000 miles. I know, but it won't be the same. Sofia set down the sweater and came to sit on the edge of her bed. Do you remember what Dr. Williams said about healthy families? Supporting growth instead of preventing it? David smiled ruefully. Yeah, I remember. Doesn't make it easier. The fact that you're letting me go even though it's hard for you, that's what makes you a good father. Not the DNA, not the biology. The choice to love me enough to let me become who I'm supposed to be. Their conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. Through the window, Sofia could see Marcus's car in the driveway. Right on time, she said, checking her phone. We're having dinner tonight, remember? David nodded. The monthly dinners had been Marcus's idea, a way for him and Sofia to build a relationship while respecting the boundaries they'd all established. David was always invited, though he didn't always attend. Tonight, he'd chosen to join them. Marcus had been true to his word about maintaining complete separation from Elena. Any coordination regarding Sofia went through David or Dr. Williams. Elena had initially pushed back against this arrangement, but a stern conversation with Carmen had convinced her to accept it. David, Marcus greeted him at the door with the careful politeness they'd developed over the summer. Sofia ready to go? Almost. Come in. Marcus entered the house that had been Sofia's home for 18 years, looking around with the interest of someone trying to understand the environment that had shaped the young woman he was getting to know. Last dinner before college, Marcus observed. How are you feeling about that? Proud, terrified, excited, the usual parental cocktail of emotions, David replied honestly. Their relationship had evolved into something neither man could have predicted. Not friendship exactly, but a mutual respect based on their shared concern for Sofia's well-being. Marcus had never tried to compete with David's role as Sofia's father, and David had gradually come to appreciate Marcus's perspective, as someone who understood Sofia's academic ambitions in ways he couldn't. Sofia appeared at the top of the stairs, carrying a small wrapped package. Ready, she announced. They drove to Rosita's, the same restaurant where David and Sofia had reconciled after the DNA results. It had become their traditional meeting place, neutral territory where they could navigate their unusual family dynamic. Over dinner, they discussed Sofia's course schedule, her dorm assignment, and her excitement about starting in the pre-med program. Marcus had been instrumental in helping her understand what to expect from the rigorous academic path she'd chosen. I have something for both of you, Sofia said as they finished eating, producing the wrapped package. I know it's not a traditional gift-giving occasion, but I wanted to mark this transition somehow. She handed the package to David, who unwrapped it to reveal a photo album. On the cover, in Sofia's neat handwriting, were the words, family, chosen, and biological. David opened the album to find photos spanning Sofia's entire life, pictures, from birthday parties, school events, family vacations, and quiet moments at home. But interspersed with the familiar images were newer photos from the summer. Pictures of Sofia and Marcus at the hospital where he worked, photos from their dinners, images of the three of them together at various outings. I wanted to document this, Sofia explained, the fact that families can grow and change and become something new without losing what they were before. Marcus studied a photo of himself and Sofia in his office at the hospital, both of them wearing white coats. He'd arranged for her to shadow him for a day, giving her a glimpse into the career she was hoping to pursue. This is beautiful, Sofia, he said quietly. Thank you. David flipped through the pages, moved by his daughter's documentation of their evolving family structure. Near the back of the album, he found a photo that made him pause, a picture of all four of them at one of Sofia's therapy sessions. Even, Elena was included, though she stood slightly apart from the group. You included your mother, David observed. She's still my mother, Sofia said simply. What she did was wrong, and it's going to take time for me to fully forgive her. But she's part of this story too. Elena had moved to Phoenix in July, taking a job with a real estate firm there. The change of scenery had been as much about escaping the ongoing gossip in their small town as it was about professional opportunities. She called Sofia weekly, and they were slowly rebuilding their relationship through careful, honest conversations.
Have you decided whether you're going to tell your college friends about all of this? Marcus asked. Sofia had wrestled with this question all summer. The complicated nature of her family situation wasn't something she could easily explain
to new acquaintances. I'm going to tell them that my parents are divorced, that my dad raised me, and that I recently connected with my biological father who's become an important mentor to me, she said. If specific friendships develop to the point where I want to share more details, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it.
That sounds wise, David agreed. You don't owe anyone your whole story.
After dinner, they returned to David's house for what had become their post-meal tradition, sitting on the back porch with coffee, talking about whatever was on Sofia's mind. Tonight, with college looming, her thoughts were focused on the future. I've been thinking about what I want to study, she said, curling up in the porch swing that David had installed when she was 10. Obviously pre-med, but I want to focus on genetics, specifically genetic counseling. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. What drew you to that field?
This summer. Everything we've been through. Sofia gestured between the three of them.
I keep thinking about how much easier this all might have been if there had been someone trained to help families navigate complicated genetic situations. Someone who understood both the science and the emotional impact. David felt a surge of pride at his daughter's ability to transform her trauma into purpose. You'd be good at that. You've gotten pretty skilled at handling difficult family dynamics. Plus, Sofia added with a slight smile, I have first-hand experience with every possible complication genetics can throw at a family. Marcus laughed despite himself. That's one way to look at it. As the evening wound down, they discussed the logistics of Sofia's departure. David would drive her to campus and help her move into her dorm. Marcus had offered to visit during Parents' Weekend in October if Sofia wanted him to come. I'd like that, Sofia said. Maybe you could give a guest lecture in one of my classes or something. Show off my cool doctor father. The casual way she referred to Marcus as her father, qualified, but father nonetheless, represented months of careful relationship building. She'd found a way to think of both men as her fathers in different ways. David as the father who had raised her and chosen her every day. Marcus as the father who shared her biology and her professional aspirations. Speaking of fathers, Marcus said carefully, I have something to tell you both. I've been seeing someone. David and Sofia exchanged glances. This was the first time Marcus had mentioned dating since they'd known him. Her name is Sarah. She's a nurse practitioner at the hospital. We've been seeing each other for about a month. How does she feel about our situation? Sofia asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I told her the truth. All of it. I figured if I was going to build a relationship with someone, it needed to be based on honesty from the beginning. And? She was shocked, obviously, but she said she admired how we've all handled it. She'd like to meet you someday, if you're open to that. Sofia nodded. I'd like that too. It would be nice to know that you're not alone in all this. As Marcus prepared to leave, he paused at his car door. Sofia, I want you to know how proud I am of who you've become. Not because of any biological connection we share, but because of the character you've shown through all of this. Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. After Marcus drove away, Sofia and David remained on the porch, both lost in their own thoughts about how far they'd come since graduation day. Dad? Sofia said eventually. Yeah? Are we going to be okay? After I leave for college, I mean. Are you going to be okay? David considered the question seriously. 3 months ago, he might have said no. The prospect of an empty house and long days without Sofia's presence would have seemed unbearable. But the summer had taught him something important about letting go. I'm going to miss you like crazy, he said honestly. But yeah, I think I'm going to be okay. I've got work that I love, family that supports me, and a daughter who's taught me that love doesn't diminish when you share it with more people. Sofia smiled. Are you talking about Marcus? I'm talking about all of it. Marcus, your mom, even Dr. Williams and Jake and everyone else who's become part of our extended family this summer. I used to think love was a finite resource, that loving you meant protecting you from everyone else who might want a piece of you. but watching you build a relationship with Marcus while still being my daughter. It's taught me that love multiplies when you give it away. Sofia got up from the swing and hugged him tightly. I love you, Dad. And not because I have to. Not because of biology or obligation or anything else. I love you because you've earned it every single day for 18 years. As they headed inside to finish her packing, both David and Sofia felt ready for the next chapter of their lives. College would bring new challenges and opportunities for growth, but they faced the future confident in the foundation they'd rebuilt together. Their family looked nothing like what they'd thought it was 6 months ago, but it was stronger, more honest, and more loving than it had ever been before. Part 9. New Beginnings. The morning of Sofia's departure for college dawned crisp and clear, one of those early September days that hinted at the autumn to come. David had been awake since 5, unable to sleep through what felt like the end of an era. He'd made Sofia's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes and turkey bacon, though neither of them had much appetite. Sofia's Honda Civic was packed to capacity with everything she needed for her dorm room. They'd rented a small trailer for the larger items, and David had insisted on driving his truck as well, just in case. Really, he wanted to extend their time together as long as possible. Carmen arrived just as they were loading the last boxes, her arms full of homemade cookies, and stern instructions about calling home regularly. Roberto showed up with his family, turning Sofia's departure into an impromptu gathering of the Martinez clan. You sure you have enough stuff? Roberto teased, eyeing the overloaded cars. I think you forgot to pack the kitchen sink. Very funny, Uncle Rob, Sofia replied, but she was smiling. The normalcy of family teasing felt precious after the summer's emotional upheaval. Jake appeared as they were saying their goodbyes, looking unusually nervous. He'd been accepted to the community college nearby and would be staying local for his first 2 years before transferring. So this is it, he said awkwardly, shifting his weight from foot to foot. It's not goodbye, Jake. It's see you later. Sofia hugged him tightly. You're still my best friend. That doesn't change because I'm 3 hours away. I know, it's just, things are going to be different. Sofia pulled back to look at him seriously. Good different or bad different? Jake had been wrestling with his feelings for Sofia all summer, watching her navigate her family crisis with a maturity that only made him admire her more. But he'd also come to understand that their friendship was too important to risk by complicating it with romance, especially now when they were both starting new chapters of their lives. Good different, he said finally. We're both going to grow and change, and maybe that's exactly what we need. As they pulled away from the house, David caught sight of Sofia in his rearview mirror, waving goodbye to the assembled family. Carmen was wiping her eyes with her apron, and Roberto was trying to look stern while clearly fighting back emotion. The 3-hour drive to State University passed too quickly, filled with conversation about everything and nothing. Sofia's nerves about her roommate, David's plans for remodeling the kitchen, memories of past road trips they'd taken together. When they finally reached the campus, David was struck by how ready Sofia seemed for this next step. Move-in day at the university was controlled chaos. Hundreds of families swarmed the dormitory complex, lugging boxes and furniture up narrow staircases while trying not to collide with other families doing the same thing. David found himself grateful for the physical work of carrying Sofia's belongings. It gave him something to do with his hands while his heart processed the magnitude of what was happening. Sofia's roommate, Ashley, was a cheerful girl from Dallas, who was planning to major in engineering. Her parents were friendly, and David could see Sofia already starting to connect with these new people who would become part of her college family. By late afternoon, Sofia's side of the dorm room was set up and organized with the efficiency that had always impressed David. Her desk was arranged just so, her clothes hung neatly in the narrow closet, and the photos from the album she'd made were arranged on her bulletin board, a visual reminder of the complex but loving family she was carrying with her into this new phase of life. It looks perfect, David said, standing in the doorway and taking in the space that would be Sofia's home for the next 9 months. It feels right, Sofia agreed. Scary, but right. Other families were beginning their tearful goodbyes in the hallway, and David knew their moment was approaching. But before he could start his own farewell, Sofia's phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Hi, Marcus, Sofia answered, putting the call on speaker so David could participate. How's move-in going? Marcus asked. His voice carried the warmth that had developed in their relationship over the summer. Good. Dad and I just finished setting up my room. It's perfect. I wish I could be there, but I wanted to call and tell you how proud I am of you. Starting college is a big step, and you're handling it with the same grace you've shown through everything this summer. David watched Sofia's face light up at the praise, and he felt a familiar surge of gratitude for Marcus's role in his daughter's life. The relationship between Sofia and Marcus had become one of mentorship and genuine affection, carefully bounded but deeply meaningful. Thank you, Sofia said. That means a lot coming from you. I have something to tell you both, Marcus continued. Sarah and I got engaged last weekend. The news caught them both by surprise, though David realized he shouldn't have been shocked. Marcus and Sarah had been growing closer throughout the summer, and Sofia had met her twice, approving of the warm, practical nurse who seemed to ground Marcus in ways he needed. That's wonderful, Sofia exclaimed. I'm so happy for you both. Thank you. We're planning a small ceremony in December, just family and close friends. I hope you'll both be there. David felt moved by the inclusion. Their unconventional family structure had found a way to expand again, incorporating new people while maintaining the careful boundaries they'd all worked to establish. We wouldn't miss it, David said, and meant it. After ending the call, Sofia turned to David with tears in her eyes. He's going to be okay. They're all going to be okay. David understood what she meant. One of Sofia's greatest fears had been that the revelations about her parentage would leave lasting damage on everyone involved. But Marcus's engagement, Elena's fresh start in Phoenix, and their own rebuilt relationship all suggested that healing was possible. You're going to be okay too, David said gently. I know. For the first time since graduation, I really know that. They walked across campus together, Sofia pointing out the buildings where she'd be taking classes, the dining hall where she'd gotten her meal plan, the library where she was already planning to spend countless hours studying. The campus buzzed with energy, thousands of students beginning their own journeys toward whatever they would become. As evening approached, David knew he couldn't delay his departure any longer. Other parents were making their tearful exits, and Sofia had orientation activities that would keep her busy until late. Standing beside his truck in the parking lot, father and daughter faced the moment they'd both been anticipating and dreading. This is it, Sofia said, echoing Jake's words from that morning. This is it, David agreed. Dad, I need you to know something. Sofia's voice was steady but emotional. Everything that happened this summer, all the pain and confusion and difficult conversations, it led us here, to this moment where I know without any doubt who I am and where I come from. And where do you come from? David asked, though he thought he knew the answer. I come from love. From your love, which chose me every day for 18 years. From Marcus's love, which recognized something in me worth knowing even in impossible circumstances. From Mom's love, which was misguided, but real. From Abuela's love, which never wavered no matter what the DNA test said. Sofia paused, looking out across the campus where she would spend the next 4 years becoming whatever version of herself was waiting to emerge. I come from a family that figured out how to rebuild itself on truth instead of lies, and that's the strongest foundation anyone could ask for. David hugged his daughter tightly, marveling at the young woman she'd become. 6 months ago, he'd thought he knew exactly who Sofia was and where she fit in the world. The revelation about her parentage had shattered those assumptions, but what had emerged from the wreckage was something more beautiful and more honest than what had existed before. I love you, Sofia. Not because you're my biological daughter, or because I raised you, or because of any obligation. I love you because of who you are. The kindest, strongest, most remarkable person I know. I love you too, Dad. And I always will. As David drove away from campus, watching Sofia wave from the steps of her dormitory, until she disappeared from view, he felt a complex mixture of sadness and pride. The little girl who had once needed him for everything was becoming a young woman capable of handling whatever life threw at her. His phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. How did it go, mijo? She's ready, he typed back. And so am I. That night, David sat alone in his house for the first time in 18 years. Sofia's room was empty, her presence still lingering in the photos on the walls and the books she'd left behind. But instead of the crushing loneliness he'd expected, David felt something else: anticipation. For 18 years, his identity had been built around being Sofia's father. Now he had the chance to discover who David Martinez was when he wasn't actively parenting, while still maintaining the most important relationship of his life. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, stopping at a number he hadn't called in months. Maria Santos, a teacher at the local elementary school, had asked him out several times over the years. He'd always declined, too focused on Sofia to consider dating. Maybe it was time to see what else life had to offer. As he dialed her number, David smiled at the thought of telling Sofia about this development during their weekly phone calls. His daughter had taught him that families could expand and evolve without losing what made them special in the first place. It was time to put that lesson into practice. Part 10. Full circle. 1 year later, Sofia sat in the passenger seat of David's truck as they pulled into the familiar parking lot of Riverside High School. The autumn air carried the same crisp promise it had when she'd left for college. But everything else felt transformed by the passage of time and the growth that had come with it. "You nervous?" David asked, adjusting his tie. The same navy. One Sofia had picked out for Father's Day years ago, now worn for a different kind of celebration. "A little," Sofia admitted. "It's strange being back here after everything that's happened." They were attending the school's annual alumni speaker event, where Sofia had been invited to address the current senior class about resilience and family dynamics. It had been her idea to accept the invitation, seeing it as an opportunity to come full circle from the disaster that had unfolded at this very location a year ago. The school looked exactly the same, but Sofia felt like a completely different person walking through its halls. She was halfway through her freshman year at State University, thriving in her pre-med courses and actively involved in the genetic counseling program she'd helped establish. Her professors were already talking about graduate school opportunities, and Marcus had introduced her to several colleagues who were impressed by her research interests. More importantly, she felt grounded in a way she never had before, secure in her identity and confident in her relationships. "There's my star student," called Mrs. Peterson, Sofia's former calculus teacher, appearing in the hallway with a warm smile. "We're so proud of what you've accomplished already." Sofia hugged her former teacher, grateful for the normality of the interaction. One of her fears about returning had been that people would treat her differently, defining her by the dramatic events of graduation day rather than by her own achievements. In the auditorium where she'd delivered her valedictorian speech just over a year ago, Sofia looked out at the faces of current seniors, teenagers on the cusp of their own adult lives, most of them dealing with their own family complications and identity questions. "Last year," Sofia began, "I stood on this stage and gave a speech about family and identity. 6 hours later, everything I thought I knew about both those things was turned upside down." She told her story simply and honestly. The shock of learning about her parentage, the pain of feeling like her identity was built on lies, the difficult work of rebuilding relationships on more truthful foundations. She talked about choosing family rather than simply accepting it, about the difference between biological connection and emotional bonds. "I learned that families don't have to look like what you expect them to look like," she said. "They just have to be built on love, honesty, and the courage to keep choosing each other even when it's hard." In the audience, David watched his daughter speak with the poise and wisdom of someone far beyond her 19 years. Beside him sat Marcus, and his new wife Sarah, who had insisted on coming to support Sofia despite having known her for less than a year. Carmen sat in the front row, beaming with grandmother's pride, while Roberto filmed everything on his phone for the family members who couldn't attend. Even Elena was there, having flown in from Phoenix specifically for this event. She sat toward the back, respectful of the boundaries that had been established but unwilling to miss this milestone in her daughter's life. Her relationship with Sofia had slowly improved over the year, through weekly phone calls and honest conversations, though trust was still being rebuilt one careful interaction at a time. After the presentation, Sofia was surrounded by students, asking questions about college, about handling family drama, about finding the courage to be honest about difficult situations. David watched her field their questions with patience and empathy, seeing how naturally she connected with young people, facing their own challenges. She's remarkable, Sarah said quietly to David. Marcus talks about her constantly, you know. He's so proud of who she's becoming. So am I, David replied. Though I can't take much credit. She did most of the growing up on her own this year. As the crowd dispersed, the extended family gathered for dinner at Rosita's, their traditional meeting place that had seen them through so many difficult conversations over the past year. The restaurant buzzed with the comfortable chaos of a large group celebrating together. Sofia looked around the table and marveled at how their family had evolved. David sat beside Maria Santos, the elementary school teacher he'd been dating for 6 months. Their relationship was still new, but Sofia could see how happy her father was, more relaxed and optimistic than she'd seen him in years. Marcus and Sarah sat across from them, Sarah's hand resting protectively over her still small baby bump. They'd announced the pregnancy just a month ago, and Sofia was excited about the prospect of having a little brother or sister, however complicated. The family trees might become. Carmen held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories about her new volunteer work at the literacy center. Roberto and his family completed their usual boisterous presence, while Elena participated quietly but warmly in the group conversation. Even Jake was there, home from his first semester at the state university where he'd transferred. He'd grown more confident over the year, and Sofia could see the man he was becoming, emerging from the boy who had been her constant support through crisis. I want to propose a toast, Marcus said, raising his glass. To Sofia, for showing all of us how to turn crisis into growth, and how to build something beautiful from broken pieces. To chosen family, David added, and the courage to keep choosing each other. As glasses clinked around the table, Sofia felt overwhelmed by gratitude for the strange and wonderful path that had led them all to this moment. A year ago, she'd stood on a graduation stage believing she knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. The revelation that followed had shattered those certainties. But what had emerged was something infinitely more precious. A family built not on assumption or obligation, but on conscious choice and unconditional love. Later that evening, as Sofia prepared to return to campus the next morning, she sat on the porch swing with David, sharing one of their traditional coffee conversations under the stars. Any regrets? David asked. About how everything unfolded? Sofia considered the question seriously. About Mom's timing and method? Yes. About the pain everyone went through? Yes. But about learning the truth? No. Even as messy and complicated as it all was, I'm glad I know who I really am now. And who are you? Sofia smiled, the same question that had tormented her a year ago now feeling like an invitation to celebrate. I'm Sofia Martinez. I'm the daughter of David Martinez, who chose to love me every day for 19 years. I'm the biological daughter of Marcus Chen, who's teaching me about medicine and mentorship. I'm the granddaughter of Carmen Martinez, who never let genetics define love. I'm the friend of Jake Morrison, who showed me that loyalty doesn't require blood relation. She paused, looking up at the stars that had witnessed all their family's transformations. I'm a young woman who learned that families aren't defined by their origins, but by their willingness to grow together. And I'm someone who's not afraid of complicated truths anymore, because I've seen how beautiful life can be when you build it on honesty instead of convenient lies. David squeezed her hand, marveling at the wisdom his daughter had gained through crisis and choice. I'm proud of you, Sofia, not for your grades or your achievements, but for who you've chosen to become. I learned from the best, she replied simply. As they sat together in comfortable silence, both father and daughter felt the deep satisfaction that comes from relationships that have been tested and proven strong. Tomorrow, Sofia would return to college and continue building her future. David would return to his own growing life, secure in the knowledge that love multiplies rather than diminishes when shared. Their family looked nothing like what anyone might have expected a year ago. But it was exactly what they'd chosen to build together. Honest, complex, and more loving than anything they could have imagined. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.